So I think a lot of people who are building something or growing or very ambitious actually are a lot more lonely than they may seem. And I think that this might be something that you resonate with as well. What might look like amazing progress and ambition on the outside could actually be a sign that you're feeling even more lonelier than ever on the inside. If you're new here, welcome to the People Like Us podcast. I'm Anna Panetta, the founder of WeBigo, and in this podcast, we talk about everything related to friendship, a sense of belonging, and really just building something real, whether that is your business, a sense of home, or just your dream life. So today, I really want to talk about the loneliness that comes through ambition. And this episode is really about a sense of loneliness that you feel as you're creating something new. Maybe you're pivoting in your career, or you're building something that has been your dream life. And even though you're kind of on the right path, it may feel like, maybe you still feel like even lonelier than ever. And you kind of keep questioning, is this actually the path that I should be following? So when I talk about loneliness in this episode, I'm not talking about this sense of that you have no one around you, or that you have nothing to do, or that you're just sitting at home all alone. And these kind of periods of life, maybe loneliness can look like you're actually surrounded by a lot of people in a physical sense, but kind of in a more internal sense, you don't really feel like anyone really understands you. And I think that this kind of can happen in a lot of different ways, whether you feel not as emotionally supported as you're building something, or maybe you feel like you're growing into a new person and kind of the people that are in your life haven't really followed suit yet, or haven't really kind of learned what kind of new person you are, or maybe you're being very ambitious and the people around you don't kind of see ambition in the same way. And so I think that a lot of this happens because when we're being ambitious, when we're building something, or when we're trying to like pivot careers or move in a direction kind of towards our more dream life, let's say, we're in a lot of motion internally where we're trying to get to our next goal, we're hustling. But maybe on the outside in our external life with our friends and family and job or whatever, things are still quite stagnant because people around us don't really understand kind of what's happening internally, that we're trying to grow, that we're trying to move and be ambitious. And I think that a lot of this can create a sense of loneliness because we kind of maybe feel misunderstood without even really understanding that is the feeling that we're feeling here. And so kind of with all this, I'm really saying, I'm not talking about the loneliness where you don't have anyone around, but I'm really talking about a loneliness that I think a lot of us feel when we're trying to accomplish big things and somehow we feel like we don't really have anyone there to support us, even though physically it might look like we do. And so I think that there's a few reasons why going for ambitious things or being ambitious in life can feel lonely. And I kind of touched on this a little bit. I think that a lot of times when we're being ambitious, when we're kind of working towards a really big goal, our internal world is changing. So kind of an example of that is kind of when I started to create my own company, my whole entire internal world started to change because I started to understand, what is Anna like an entrepreneur? What kind of goals do I have? How will I be hustling every single day to make sure I hit these objectives? But my outside world didn't really change much because from the outside, I was still working on the weekdays. I still was on my laptop. I still had the same friends. I still was living in the same house, had the same people around me. So nothing really changed. But in my mind, there was a shift of, I'm now going to stop working in the corporate world and create my own business, and I'm going to be successful. And so that created an internal shift where I wanted to be more ambitious, but on the outside, it didn't look like much change. And so I think that this happens when we really are ready to accomplish something, hit our new goals, be ambitious, that this is a big mental shift that I think is something to be celebrated because we're trying to kind of create a path towards what we're trying to accomplish in life. But on the outside, maybe it looks like nothing changes. And I think that this can feel lonely because we internally feel like we're doing so much work, but it doesn't really seem like many people are noticing it. And so I think that kind of with this, the whole point is that when you build something, this takes up a lot of emotional energy. Being ambitious takes up a lot of emotional energy. It takes up as much emotional energy, if not more, than the relationships we have to maintain and such. And it's not just a time factor. And I think that maybe sometimes what happens is that people expect that if you're hustling or kind of growing your career, your business, that this translates into you're spending more time working, you're working from right when you wake up all the way to when you go to sleep. And although this may or may not be true, I think that the unseen toll on our emotional well-being is a lot more than just the toll and the time that would take every single day to kind of work towards our goals. And I think the fact that this is something that we all know to be true, but we also feel that no one really sees that, can feel very lonely because we feel that emotional toll, but at the same time, we're the only one in our world experiencing that. And I think the final thing here is that when you're starting to accomplish your goals, and this is something that I've experienced a lot, is kind of as you're working towards goals, you're accomplishing goals, your ambition is paying off. On the outside, it might look exciting, and I think a lot of people might even come and celebrate you, say, wow, look at what you accomplished, or oh my gosh, look how far you've come in a few months or in a year or something. But on the inside, we still feel like we're just getting started. And I think that this is something where it's very internal, understanding what we want to accomplish as a person. I think that it's very individual, our goals, whether it's in our life, our business, our career, or in friendships or whatever. I think that it's a very internal decision on what we want to accomplish to kind of carve the path into the life that we want. And so sometimes you can hear people saying like, wow, look what you accomplished, or you look so happy, or oh my gosh, I can't believe that you're already doing this at this age or whatever. And so that dialogue can feel lonely because in your head you're like, that's not what I'm aiming for, maybe. Or maybe they don't understand that this isn't it, that I'm not even close to what I personally want. And I don't think that this is because we're not grateful as people, but I think it's because we at the core don't feel understood. And I think that not feeling understood then feels very lonely. And so I think that kind of what happens is that as we start to be more and more ambitious in our life, which I think that is something that we're kind of in a phase as a society where we're all trying to ask for more in our life. We all want to have financial freedom. We want to be working the job that makes us feel fulfilled. We want to have friendships that make us full as a person. As we're being more ambitious, which is something that I think is so beautiful as a society, ambition creates growth, and that separates us from our old self. And it's kind of, as you're being more ambitious, you're turning into a new, more mature, grown person that is accomplishing your goals, hitting those objectives that you have put on yourself. And so that separation from who you were before and who you're trying to become can feel very lonely, because usually the people around us can't catch up as quickly as you can. And it doesn't mean that the people around us don't support us. It just means that they take a little bit of time to understand kind of where you're going. And that separation between your old self and the new self you're trying to become can feel very lonely, especially because maybe you don't even know who the new self you're trying to become is just yet. And that can be really scary. And so I think that kind of going back to kind of what this looks like, I really want to take a second to talk about kind of my experience with being ambitious and kind of the true loneliness that I felt. And I think there's kind of a paradox here, because I created a company built in creating genuine friendships. My company literally is set out to not only obviously help me, but help our users find like more genuine friendships in their city. And I think that as I personally created it, I've felt even more lonely than ever in this last year. And I think a lot of that is from kind of these reasons that I stated, where kind of we've been around for a year now. And so now I hear so many people all the time saying, wow, you've grown so much in a year. You're in so many different cities now. Look how happy users are. Look at the app. So many different compliments I've received from what I'm building. And one would say, if I complain about it, then I'm not being grateful. If I say that people are complimenting me, but I haven't even gotten close to what I want to accomplish, it sounds like I'm not grateful. And I think that this kind of guilt for not feeling grateful for what I've already accomplished has made me feel quite lonely, because I think that me as a founder and creating WeMigo as a company and as a tech product, I have really big goals that I want to accomplish. I don't see what I'm building as something that's just a small community that we want to stop here and we're good where we are. I really want to see it grow and scale. I want to impact as many people in a positive way as possible. And so these are really big goals that are personal to me. And they're not goals that I expect people to understand, or I don't expect people to know them, but I feel like I'm just getting started. And so when people compliment me, it feels like almost a guilty feeling, because I think, yeah, I guess like I've accomplished something in this last year, but kind of in my head, I'm like, oh, my goal, my objective is so much further than what I've accomplished this last year. And I feel like people don't understand that. And so then it's like I feel lonely because people don't understand it. I feel guilty for not being grateful. And it just kind of creates this like kind of internal bubble of feeling not understood. And I think that this is something I've talked to many people who are building something, who are in a career transition, and they feel the same way because although everyone around us has the best intentions, and although we really like want to kind of be empathetic to everyone, a lot of these ambitious things that we do are very internal and people can't understand it even if they really want to. And so I think that this feeling of guilt for feeling lonely while you're accomplishing things is something that happens to a lot of us. And I think it's something that you shouldn't feel guilty for. I think it's something that maybe you can reflect on a little bit. Is there a time that you have also felt guilty for being ambitious or not being grateful for your ambition or what you've accomplished? I think that a lot of us have really big goals, and sometimes the fact that we haven't met those goals yet makes us feel like we're being ungrateful, and then we feel guilty and lonely and stuff. And now I'm not saying that we shouldn't be grateful for what we're accomplishing. I do think, like in my situation, I'm creating a company from scratch. So I should be grateful for what I've accomplished in a year, even though obviously my larger goals are much bigger than what I could accomplish in a year. But I think that it's also very normal to not just want to stop at that 1 year mark, if that makes sense. And now I think that kind of when you look at the lens with friendship and how ambition affects relationships, it can be very nuanced in understanding kind of how your personal growth and what you want to create as a person can really affect the people that are around in your life. I think that we all are aware that not everybody in our life is meant to be in every season of our life. Some friendships are here for just a season. Some are come in for a new one. Some fade away. I think that's normal. And I think that maybe what even feels hard is when we're being ambitious, when we're growing, when we're accomplishing goals, we're quite literally moving into a new season of life and a new version of ourselves. And there can be a little bit of a grieving period because maybe not all the relationships follow with us to this next season. I think that although logically we understand that this is what happens in life, that maybe as you move into a new version of you and better version of you, one that's even happier, that maybe you'll meet new people that'll become new friends of yours, and maybe old friends might just kind of fade away because you just don't connect as much. And although this is just the way that life happens, it can feel very lonely. And I think that this is something that can be really difficult, but we don't need to frame it so harshly, because I think that we need to see that the version of you that you are now and the version of you that you are trying to become is the most important. And so seeing those friendships as kind of tools in the journey that you're following to the new version of you is actually quite beautiful. And so as you're growing, a lot of dynamics in your relationships, whether it's relationships with friends or family or your partner, can feel off. And I don't think that that necessarily means that now that relationship is over and they're not meant for the next season of you. But I do think that it can give like this kind of feeling of anxiety of not understanding why relationship dynamics feel off, because you are kind of growing into a new person. And so I think that kind of as you're being ambitious, as you're growing and working towards new objectives, you might notice that you don't resonate as much with your friends. You might even notice that you want to be alone more, to be in your thoughts and reflect more, or maybe write more. And that's all okay, because doing those things help you kind of grow into that new person, because once you feel more realized as a person, then you're able to really understand what you want in your relationships as well. And I think that also when you want more in your life, you also want more in your friendships. If you're demanding more because you want to grow a company, or you want to improve in your career, or you want to build your dream life, if you're demanding so much in your own personal life, then you're going to start to demand more in your friendships, which is a beautiful thing. You want to demand relationships that fulfill you, that make you feel heard and seen, just as much as you will want to make your own friends be heard and seen. And so this can create this change of dynamics in our relationships as you're growing into a new person through ambition, that you will be demanding more from your relationships. And maybe even your circle gets smaller because you go for more quality versus quantity. But kind of with this whole transition, that in between can feel really lonely because you're not really in your old life yet, but you're not fully into your new life yet. And I think that that is okay. But I think that it's okay to kind of also give ourselves grace and understand kind of what is happening and why that's happening. The final thing I really want to kind of touch on, and where this all kind of comes to play, is kind of from being a business founder, the loneliness that comes with responsibility. As you are being ambitious, as you're kind of hitting new goals, there's a lot of responsibility and ambition. No matter what your goal is, whether your goal is to hit a new revenue mark, build a new company, create a new career, move to a new city, these personal goals are completely your responsibility. And I think that we all know that, but it can sometimes feel very overwhelming because you are the only person that has the true vision of what you want to accomplish, who's making the decisions, who's doing the actions needed to accomplish those goals, and you can't depend on anybody. And not just because no one's there to support you, but because you're the one that the goal depends on. You might be able to ask for help from your friends or partner or family. You might be able to ask for emotional support, but at a core, you understand that the responsibility is yours, and that can feel very lonely. As a founder of a company, as much as I would love to, I can't ever take a full vacation where I take a week off and just turn off my phone. And so it can feel very lonely because I have so much responsibility that I never am able to just turn it off. And it just feels like I'm always in my head and no one really understands that. And it's like, even when people support you, they don't really always feel what you're carrying. And so you can have that emotional support, which is of course amazing, but since they don't feel what you're carrying, that loneliness doesn't fully go away. I think that kind of what I'm trying to say with all of this is that becoming and growing an ambition can be lonely, but I think it's also quite clarifying because that loneliness is coming from a pure feeling of growth, of transition, and to becoming a better person. You're kind of growing to bigger and better goals. You're trying to be a better version of yourself. With all of this, you can be a lot more clarified about what you want in your life, what you want in the relationships around you, and what you need to feel supported emotionally and otherwise. Obviously, changing always has social friction, and I think that it's obviously already in itself a really big journey to have individually. And so as you're on this journey of growth, it's already a big weight on yourself as an individual. And then apart from that, kind of going through it alone is lonely. But I think that also we should see it as a clarifying thing, because if you have much bigger, better goals, maybe that will define who you want to surround yourself with in the future. Maybe it'll define how you as a person are able to go through hardships and support yourself without needing to depend on others. I think that a lot of these really scary moments that happen through ambition actually make us grow even better, make us value and prioritize what we really should be prioritizing instead of just kind of feeling stuck in the middle. Like, I think that a lot of us feel like if we choose to do the hard thing, if we choose to be ambitious, that we cannot be honest about the emotional toll that it takes. And I think that we need to speak out more about it and be honest to ourselves about what it really feels like. I think that perhaps maybe doing the hard things means accepting that growth in the middle is lonely. I think that maybe sometimes when you're doing the hard things, it means accepting that growth in between is lonely, but it doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. And I think that a lot of times when you start to have those kind of intrusive thoughts of that I'm on the wrong path, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, to remember that those feelings are maybe the most clear sign that you are on the right path. Because if it were easy, then it would not be ambition and you would not be accomplishing great things. You can remember, you could be grateful of the journey you're in. You can be grateful of the growth that you're having, but still feel lonely and still feel not understood. You can be proud of what you're creating, but still need support. And I don't think that makes us weak. I think that makes us human. And you can also want more from your life and still miss having people that make life a little bit more easy to live. It's a balance in the end, because we need people to feel supported, but also you need to really be able to trust yourself that you're able to grow into this new person and find the people that really can feed into that new version of you. Now, thank you so much for listening to the People Like Us podcast. If this resonated with you, please make sure to send it to someone else that you think would resonate with it as well. And be sure to subscribe so you're able to see the next episode when it comes out. Thank you. Bye.